they're not allowing us normal folks to know about. But I digress. Let's get into the video, and I thank you for watching.
Witnesses are here. If you would be so kind as to repeat after me. I do hereby affirm
I do hereby affirm
that I will tell the truth
to tell the truth
Tell the truth,
and nothing but the truth
and nothing but the
nothing but the
truth
truth.
to the members of this committee today.
to the members of this committee today.
Thank you both.
And we're going to begin with Dr. Greer.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here, and I would just like to summarize this subject by saying that I got involved in 1990 when I formed the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence and put together some of the early briefings for folks in the administration of President Clinton. This occurred because in 1992, I was leading a team of people where we had a contact event on a beach in Florida. And this got reported into a Department of Defense memo or report that was done by John Peterson of the Arlington Institute. And he was friends with a man who became CI Director Woolsey. CI Director Woolsey invited us to come to Washington to meet with him and some folks to discuss this. And it was to my great surprise and dismay to learn that the CI Director had made inquiries into this subject and had not gotten any information. This was also true of President Clinton, who through Webster Hubbell had also made inquiries. Because of this, we decided to put together an initiative which was called Project Starlight. And it was very much involved in the early days with briefing senior people in the military and government. And to my dismay, I have to say at this point that we discovered that there was an extra-constitutional management of this subject, which continues to this moment, which I find, as Eisenhower said, an existential threat to our democracy. It is for that reason, a few years ago, I left my medical career to pursue this and to get the truth out to the public because I feel it's a matter of very pressing concern. I'm an emergency doctor, and I always kind of halfway jokingly say, I know an emergency when I see one, and our planet and our government is in an emergency. During the period around the time we had our meetings with Mr. Rockefeller, I had already set up briefings through the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Kramer, meeting at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, to which the remains of the Roswell event was sent. They initially did not want to have this meeting. It was ordered by the head of Air Force Intelligence under the orders of J2, which, as you know, is head of intelligence joint staff, Admiral Kramer. That then led to a series of events where we decided what we needed to do is pull together the best military intelligence and corporate, Lockheed, Northrop, and other witnesses, as we call them, to this issue and begin to do briefings for various members of Congress and people in the administration.
So before we continue, this guy right here, I've watched this video a little bit, but from his body language, I want you guys to watch him. His eyeballs continue to bulge out. He constantly continues to look off in the distance. I'm not sure if this guy is just waking up. Maybe this is early in the morning when they first, woke up about 7, 8 o'clock, and they get there at 9.
In 1995, I organized and Mr. Rockefeller funded a gathering of the first witnesses at Asilomar near Monterey in California. These were people, they were cosmonauts, they were from Russia, they were astronauts such as Edgar Mitchell. They were people who had worked with Eisenhower and knew of Eisenhower's concern that he had lost control over the secrecy on this issue around 1956, when, ironically, the Rockefeller Commission reorganized the Department of Defense and the CIA into such a Byzantine.
Okay, now it's working. Okay. Yeah, so like what I was pointing out, I don't know if you guys were able to hear me beforehand, but my name is M. Welcome to my channel. This guy right here that's standing next to Dr. Greer, or sitting, excuse me, next to Dr. Greer, his eyes are like popping out of his head. every time you see him look around, he looks very suspicious. You know, like something is like not normal. You wouldn't see a guy like this, like sitting down looking like this, unless he's spaced out or he didn't have a lot of sleep and he's hyped up on coffee. But in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong. You guys, like I said, can comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. This guy has to be on something, but that's nothing. That has nothing to do with this video. So I don't want to take up more of your time. And I appreciate you guys tuning in, or the people that are watching this video. I appreciate you guys' time. So let's get back to it. Okay.
Mess that to this day, these projects have not had proper oversight at that level. This then led to us doing some beanies for members of Congress. We did in 1997, and Congressman Dan Burton, who was chairman of the House Government Oversight Committee, came, who, along with a number of other congressmen and senators, and also following that, we did what's called a stand-up briefing. Edgar Mitchell and I did the sixth man to walk on the moon with some of our military sources for then head of intelligence joint staff, Admiral Tom Wilson. To my astonishment, when I had this meeting, I had sent in advance a briefing similar to the one that I provided here. This is the one I provided for President Obama. And what I was astonished and appalled to learn is that the first document that I have in this document is a National Reconnaissance Office document that has actionable intelligence listing project code names and code numbers effective as of the early 90s. This admiral, Tom Wilson, looked through this document, identified one of the compartments, contacted them, and was told, and I'm quoting, "Sir, you do not have a need to know." Now, this is the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And he said to the person, it was a contractor, I cannot disclose which one, who said that basically, "Sir, we will not discuss this with you further," and basically hung up on the admiral. Now, because of that event, we then wrote a unless otherwise directed letter. My military advisor said, "Dr. Greer, what you need to do is do an UNOD letter that goes to all branches of government that says that we have concluded that this subject is being managed in an extra-constitutional fashion. A priori, the National Security Act no longer applies to those under those oaths, and they are hereby exonerated or freed from them." We wrote such a letter to the heads of all agencies. It was never contested, and the way a unless otherwise directed letter works is that unless you hear back from the agency, you are allowed to proceed with your assessment. And our assessment was that we were going to go forward with these men and women and documents. In fact, there was a senior CIA official who I've been asked not to name, who's still in the science directorate of the CIA, who said, "Please do this for our nation." At that point, we began to gather together more of these so-called witnesses. They've been called now. I call them patriots who want to have the truth out. And we then did the 2001 disclosure project in this ballroom, and we're about at our 12-year anniversary of that. And I organized that for the purpose of getting the public informed and also Congress. There were tens of thousands of petitions sent to members of Congress and faxes asking for hearings. Unfortunately, a few months later, 9/11 happened. The day before 9/11, September 10th, that there was a memo from a comment, I should say, in a speech by then Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, who stated that there is $2.3 trillion unaccounted for in the Department of Defense budget. Let me repeat that number, $2.3 trillion. This
Basically, what he was saying is before 9/11 happened, the day beforehand, they came out with a memo, and there was a press conference basically saying that, hey, there's $2.3 trillion that has gone missing. They don't have, it's not accounted for, and that basically that they were trying to figure out where it went to, and they didn't have any like trail or evidence or any transactions going from this place to this place to this place. And the reason being is because a lot of this money was from black site operations, which basically are not put on any type of documentation. because they're so top secret and classified that only a select few people have the knowledge about in the first place?
This was on September 10th, 2001. Now, prior to that, I was not surprised at that comment because back in 1994, I had a meeting with Mr. D'Amato, not the senator, who was the chief counsel for the Senate Appropriations Committee, and he informed me that they felt that there was upwards of or in excess of $100 billion a year missing out of the Treasury going into so-called black projects. Now, this is a misnomer, just so that the committee knows. The proper term in the military and intelligence world is an unacknowledged special access project. Now, special access projects are projects that, of course, you have to be read into with various clearances. The unacknowledged ones are ones for which there is no acknowledgement on paper, and anyone in the project is ordered not to speak about it under threat of termination with extreme prejudice, which is death. My senior military advisor was in one such project. He has not even informed me what it concerned. It was under Admiral Harry Train. It was a $3 billion project. This is one project that was unacknowledged. So this is not a theory. This is how the deep national security state actually operates, that the members of Congress usually are not aware of. Now, in the ensuing years, since 2001, we have continued these briefings. We've had greater success in other countries. There are now more than 14 countries that have opened their UFO files. We've been very instrumental in this. I've worked with people at the Vatican, the French government. And what is also very exciting is that one of the most important documents in history, which I'll provide to the committee, is a document from the Ministry of Defense of France committing to my organization to engage in a long-term project to make peaceful contact with these quote-unquote visitors. This document has not been yet released. I will provide it to the committee, and there is great progress being made in other countries. Admiral Morin, who won the Ampere Prize in France and is an MD, as I am, and also a PhD physicist, and has been an advisor and was an advisor to President Sarkozy and others, has been meeting with us, and we have been involved with projects in other countries to do this. I will tell you, however, that as they began to step into this, they were warned off by someone within the national security state saying, do not pursue this. And so we went to France about 3 years ago, and we had an expedition to actually make contact with these extraterrestrial civilizations. And the Admiral later informed us that their radar tracked objects that came over the site at between 100,000 and 200,000 kilometers an hour. Now, what is fascinating about this is that the French were not deterred from doing this project with us, but they have to date remained fairly quiet. There is therefore progress being made in other G7 countries. As you know, we have a former Minister of Defense of Canada here who is very supportive, the Honorable Paul Hellyer. And what we find, however, is that the United States has remained a black hole of secrecy. Now, the reason for this is complex. One of the reasons is inertia. Once you go into an unacknowledged special access project, it's very hard to bring things out. Number two is that this is the crown jewel in America of the defense industry and the aerospace industry. My uncle was a senior project engineer at Grumman that became Northrop Grumman that put the first man on the moon with the lunar module. He worked on the lunar module, which is part of how I got involved with this. What I have found through my uncle and other contacts at Lockheed is that we have had, since about the mid-1950s, operational electromagnetic gravitic devices, basically in parlance of the pop culture anti-gravity devices that are deeply classified and are the next generation beyond rockets and jet aircraft. These are fully operational and not experimental. These have been used very discreetly. We have an enormous amount of information on this, including a facility, Norton Air Force Base, where we had Frank Carlucci, the Secretary of Defense for Ronald Reagan was ushered in there, and some people who were with him, such as Brad Sorensen, have given us information and actually have helped us provide schematics and drawings for these so-called alien reproduction vehicles, a bit of a misnomer because in reality, advanced anti-gravity research began with T. Townsend Brown in 1929. We'll get more into this on Friday. The key point here is that the technologies that would give us a new civilization without oil, without gas, without coal, without nuclear power are extant. They already exist, they've been developed, and it is a matter of the utmost national security and world peace and justice that we bring these sciences out. And world peace.
So Dr. Greer is basically saying that, hey, look, we have the technology. We already took and backward engineered alien vehicles or aircraft, and we have the ability to make free energy, so that way we won't have to use gas or oil or anything like that, you know. But the government is basically greedy and doesn't want to put this information out to the mass public because they want us to basically to keep continue on the path and spending money, because they know if they put this out, it's just like water. You know, water should be free, but yet people have to buy water. You know, the same thing. Like every month, you have electric bill, you have a water bill. So basically, you know, all those things should be free. Nobody should have to sit here and pay for something that's, you know, a human right, human need. But we continue to do it because the government is greedy. And it's the same thing with this.
And justice, that we bring these sciences out and start a new chapter in the human experience. Thank you.
Daniel.
I'd like to address the issue from the point of view of a practicing attorney in these particular areas. I just touched on it briefly earlier in the other panel, that when I was at the Cahill Gordon law firm in New York, we were brought the Pentagon Papers at that time. And Jim Goodell, the chief counsel for the New York Times, contacted us. I had been working on the briefs for the New York Times because I happened to have initiated the case that established the right of journalists to protect their confidential news sources when I was at the Harvard Civil Rights Law Review. So I was at the firm and was working on the briefs, and Jim Goodell brought us the information that they had the Pentagon Papers. And so it was the first time that I found myself in a situation where I had to kind of try to put myself in the shoes of people that I had the luxury prior to that time of just saying, we ought to get it all out. We ought to just reveal everything. We ought to tell all the people have a right to know everything. And I found myself in this peculiar situation of starting to ask questions about what might be in there that we had to try to be careful about revealing. Now, in that particular case, it wasn't a hard question. Because we found things about the assassination program of the Central Intelligence Agency, the Phoenix program. We found out that they were smuggling opium in Southeast Asia to help fund it. We found out about the Nugan Bank that was set up by Theodore Shackley, who was the CIA station chief in Saigon. All the things that we found out about in that particular instance, I felt were criminal conduct, unlawful conduct. And it had occurred because the Central Intelligence Agency, when it was created in 1947, was out of Section 5412. The 5412 committee was set up inside the National Security Council to actually oversee covert operations. And for the first time, it actually legitimatized the undertaking of covert operations that were not going to be revealed to the Congress. It was before we had an intelligence committee. You remember that Prescott Bush, the United States Senator from Connecticut, was the one who would brief in certain Congress people and certain senators about this. So there was this entire kind of extra constitutional process or protocols that began to be undertaken right at the very beginning. Finally, they set up the 5412 committee inside the National Security Council that oversaw those things. And as I said, I had never had access to that until we saw the Pentagon Papers. And on reviewing it with Neil Sheehan and the others, I came to the conclusion that all of this should be revealed, that these were criminal activities that had happened, that were all happening outside of the United States, but they were having such dramatic effects inside the United States that I thought they ought to be talked about. But that was my first experience with this. As it proceeded, I ended up becoming chief counsel in the Karen Silkwood case, the woman that was killed out in Oklahoma at the nuclear site out there. Right. And during our investigations of that, we discovered that 98 pounds of bomb-grade plutonium were being smuggled out of the Kerr-McGee nuclear facility, the reprocessing plant. And we discovered that it was actually being transported secretly to Israel. So I touched on that old third rail. There it was. And we went and we briefed Peter Stockton. He was the chief investigator for John Dingell. John Dingell was chairing the House Subcommittee on Energy and the Environment. And because of the oversight authority they had over nuclear facilities environmentally, we briefed them and told them all about this. And they actually set up they tasked a real-time National Security Agency satellite to actually monitor the smuggling of these materials and actually track them onto being put on charter oil company ships and then boarded by Mossad and brought to Israel. And at that time, they were under the condition that they had to share some of the special nuclear materials, 98% pure bomb-grade plutonium, that they had to share them with the Shah of Iran. So that they actually were providing 98% pure bomb-grade plutonium, reprocessed plutonium, to the Shah of Iran and to South Africa, the Afrikaner government. Now, because of my discovery of that, it was a clear, absolute, blatant violation of the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty. And so I briefed the judge. We had the Judge Tice, Frank G. Tice, was the chief counsel, was the judge on that case. I provided a memorandum to him, an affidavit to him explaining the whole thing. And the following Monday, he contacted me and said the Central Intelligence Agency had contacted him and wanted to have an in-camera ex parte meeting with him. And he met with them and immediately dismissed one of the counts in our case, in the Karen Silkwood case, her death on the highway. The whole interfering with her right to travel on the highway, her First Amendment right to meet with the New York Times, because David Burnham was waiting for her at the Holiday Inn to receive the documents showing that it was 40 pounds, 98% pure bomb-grade plutonium was missing. And when we gave that information to the congressman, nobody ever talked about it after that. They called Stan Turner in. They brought him downstairs, put him under oath, challenged him about this. And the only reason I knew about it is because Peter Stockton told us about it. But so it became obvious again to me at that point that there were secrets that virtually everybody agreed within the political circles had to be kept secret. And this our supplying in complete violation of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, 98% bomb-grade plutonium to Israel was one of those things. And so
basically what he's saying is America violated a treaty by giving nuclear bomb-grade material to, Africa and Israel, and they basically were violating, international laws and stuff like that. But the people that he talked to or tried to talk to, basically, anytime he would say something or send something or up to, discuss it, the CIA or FBI or someone in the government would basically get a hold of them, and then they wouldn't say anything or wouldn't put any information out there to basically keep it under wraps. That's usually how it is. It's the same thing with like UFOs or anything like that. As soon as you get close to, putting out information or anything that could be they consider national security risk, they'll get a hold of you and do anything they can to possibly keep you from talking, which sucks because a lot of times the information is needed, for the public, because as a human, we have the right to know what's going on inside of our world. and I don't think that anybody or any type of political government system should be shutting people down from knowing the truth.
So that I realized that at that time there was this dimension, such as Dr. Greer has talked about. There are levels of classification that are way beyond people in the Congress, way beyond us as civilians. But I spent a lot of time looking into this whole process. And as you know, I was the one that filed the original Iran-Contra case that got the special prosecutor appointed. We uncovered all the smuggling of the weapons that were going on, the cocaine smuggling operations that were going on. It became clear to me that everybody knew about this, that all kinds of people knew about this going on, but the citizens didn't. And as I tried to bring information to some people in Congress, in the Senate, et cetera, talked with Tip O'Neill about all of this, and we as I discovered all this stuff was going on, I was then later contacted by Dr. John Mack, as I told you, to represent him. And I was aware of the fact that there was this realm of ultimate secrecy that existed. But I realized that there was a classification above everything that I'd ever seen that was cosmic top secret. There's a whole category of cosmic top secret that has to do with this particular category. And that there's information in there about contacts with these beings that were recovered from Roswell, a living being, one particular living being that they brought to Wright-Patterson, that they didn't know what to do with the being. They didn't know how to take care of the being. They had to keep the being isolated. They were afraid of potential contamination. And I was challenged at that point to try to determine whether or not I would reveal these things to everyone. I kept trying to have contact with people inside the intelligence community to say, look, if there's something that you think I ought to know that would convince me that the American people somehow shouldn't know about this, tell me about it, will you? Because if you're not going to tell me about it, I can tell you I'm going after it. And I'm going to be going after it in a context that may make it automatically available to anybody once I get it. And only a couple times was I ever approached and said to stay away from these things. Well, that's not an answer, just to stay away from it. And so what I've done is I'm just coming to you today to tell you that with my experience directly as one of the attorneys in the Pentagon Papers case, I was in F. Lee Bailey's office when we did the Watergate burglary. It was our office that got McCord to write the letter to Judge Sirica, blowing the whistle on the Watergate plumbers. The Karen Silkwood case with the smuggling of the plutonium, the Iran-Contra case with all of the smuggling of cocaine that was going on. So, but nothing matches this issue. Nothing comes close to matching this issue, because the reality of it is that because whatever this extraterrestrial intelligence is, they obviously share the belief that somehow we shouldn't be just told right straight outright. As people have said, why don't they land on the White House lawn and just tell us? So there is obviously some type of consensus that exists at the highest levels of the security, the cosmic top secret clearance in our government. And when I asked Gorbachev about this, because I was legal counsel to the State of the World Forum for Gorbachev and Senator Baker at the end of the Cold War, he told me flat out that these things existed, and that they'd known that these existed, and they were in communication with the United States government about this. So what I'm saying is that we need to, as citizens, be insistent upon finding out about this unless and until somebody communicates information to us that makes sense as to why it is that people all shouldn't know about this. And they haven't told me that yet. And so until they do, I'm going to continue to try to find out everything I can about it and share it with people who've had the kind of responsible positions that you have had in your lives and still have in your lives. Because the reality is you still have political capital. Whether you're 87 years old or 39 years old or whatever your ages are now, that you still have political capital that can effectuate a change. And that for you to go collectively to sit down with certain members of Congress or certain people together to say, look, this is what we know and we want to act responsibly. Can you please help us act responsibly? But we're going to act in any event. And that's how you will find out, I believe.
So I don't know if you noticed, but when he said like basically, um, sum it up short version, that why don't aliens just land on the front lawn of the White House? Because the UFOs extraterrestrials have an agreement with the United States that basically they won't reveal themselves or do anything to cause mass hysteria. Um, and the way that the government works or the way that the agreement works is basically that they gonna wait until they're gonna just like sprinkle every so now and then, sprinkle a little bit something here and there, and try to build up to get us ready and until they want to, um, let us know um, that they are indeed extraterrestrials from a different solar system. That because there's so much you can go into detail about to talk about, but it just doesn't make any sense. If they do have this equipment or do have these uh, vehicles that are capable of anti-gravity, have the technology to go the speed of sound, or yeah, break the sound barrier, so fast that speed of light, I should say, like it just doesn't make any sense to us why we're not being told unless that they have an agreement, and that's the only reason why they wouldn't reveal themselves, because they feel like it would just cause mass hysteria. And if you think guys are are a little bit off target, comment down below, let me know what you guys think. As far as what I believe, I just believe that there's an agreement between the government and these beings that are coming from wherever they're coming from, and that's the only reason why we're not able to know is because, well, even the president doesn't know. So like like he said, there's a cosmic level of classification on people that are able to know certain things, and the rest of us are just pretty much kept in the dark. So
Mr. Cameron.
As I explained this morning, my name is Grant Cameron. I'm a private investigator for 38 years. I've spent most of my time looking at what the highest levels of U.S. government, military, and intelligence agencies know about the UFO phenomena. This afternoon, speaking about the Rockefeller Initiative, my testimony is based on 1,000 pages of documents that were released to me in 2001 by the Clinton White House in response to an FOIA for UFO files. It should be noted here that, like the documents you were talking about this morning, the Roswell documents that disappeared, these documents have now disappeared. Both the National Archives and the Clinton Library both maintain they do not have the documents. For example, I filed an FOIA with the Clinton Library. I received about 1,000 pages of UFO documents, which included an awful lot of material that Stephen Greer had said to the president. The 1,000 pages that I'm going to talk about right now were not part of the disclosure, and both maintain that they don't have them. They are on my website, the President's UFO website, and basically what the documents show, these FOIA documents show that billionaire businessman Lawrence Rockefeller had approached the White House to get the government to disclose the truth behind the UFO mystery. There was different Rockefellers. There's Nelson Rockefeller, who was the political guy who ran for government. There was David, who was the money guy. And Lawrence Rockefeller was the sort of humanitarian, had a philosophy degree from Princeton, and was very interested in this phenomena. Rockefeller also had other meetings outside the White House. One example was with Republican Stephen Horn, Republican from California, from the Government Reform and Oversight Committee related to government secrecy. Rockefeller's request for UFO disclosure was dealt with in the White House by the President's science advisor, Dr. Jack Gibbons. To prepare for the first meeting in March of 1993 with Rockefeller, Dr. Gibbons requested a UFO briefing from the CIA. That briefing was tasked at the CIA to Dr. Ronald Pandolfi. So if you want to know, that's probably the guy you should be phoning. Dr. Ronald Pandolfi, who's been identified by the New York Times as the top scientist in the CIA, and a man who is rumored inside the UFO community as the agency expert on UFOs, and a man that over the last 20 years has repeatedly interacted with many researchers inside the UFO community. As the CIA has a public position of no UFO involvement, Pandolfi gave the job of writing the White House briefing, which he knew would become public because Lawrence Rockefeller was involved. He gave that briefing job to a private UFO researcher, Mr. Bruce Maccabee, who had done a couple of UFO lunchtime talks at the CIA headquarters. The briefing therefore became not an official briefing on the subject, but just a personal opinion of one researcher inside the UFO community. Rockefeller exerted great pressure on the Clinton White House, threatening to write an open letter demanding UFO disclosure from President Clinton, and to make this demand public in full-page ads in all the major newspapers in the United States. Under this pressure, Dr. Gibbons agreed to try to get some sort of disclosure on the UFO subject. He asked Mr. Rockefeller to pick one case that could be declassified, and then all the rest of the cover-up material could be dealt with. Mr. Rockefeller picked the 1947 UFO crash at Roswell as the case to investigate. And that is one of the reasons why there was a reinvestigation of the Roswell crash by the U.S. Air Force in 1994. The U.S. Air Force did not decide to do it on their own. At the same time, the White House was greenlighting a reinvestigation.
So that those that don't know, Roswell is over there in New Mexico, and that's where that crash that happened. That basically a bunch of people seen it, and they ended up saying, I believe it was a weather balloon, and there had came out not too long afterwards. Before there was this guy that was, I think he was like a captain or a major or something like that in the army. And basically, he said what happens is they took the actual crash debris and stuff like that, and they moved it over onto what is that base over there in Area 51. So they moved it over to Area 51, and they took in place, put a hot weather balloon in its place. And when they took a picture of it in the newspaper, that's where it showed that it was a hot weather balloon. But it was a bunch of bull crap, and that it really was a crash from an extraterrestrial or UAP, and that they did find a couple of bodies in there, and all that stuff was moved over to Area 51. So that's why Area 51 is so heavily guarded, because of the previous stuff that's happened in the past and the stuff that they have now. And I think there's a lot of nuclear stuff over there too. But yeah, so that's basically what he's talking about for those that don't know about the crash that happened in New Mexico, or Roswell, New Mexico, excuse me.
Of Roswell, the Government Accountability Office was also doing a reinvestigation of the Roswell crash. That investigation was initiated by New Mexico Congressman Stephen Schiff, who ordered the GAO investigation after his requests for information were stonewalled by Clinton's first Secretary of Defense, Les Aspin. The GOA study, however, was quite limited. Only FOIA replies on the Roswell crash were used. Nothing was found except that a bunch of key Roswell documents from the time of the crash that would have indicated what had happened were missing. Therefore, no conclusion was offered. The U.S. Air Force reinvestigation discovered a way to bypass the actual reinvestigation of the crash. Rather than following the testimony of many of the witnesses that will be appearing here this week, they simply published a final report stating that the whole 1947 crash event had been caused by the launch of a mogul balloon designed to monitor a possible Soviet nuclear test. In 1995, in Belfast, Northern Ireland, President Clinton...
So remember I said about the hot weather balloon? That's what he's talking about. And that's not the truth. There was a crash. There were humanoids in that spaceship or UAP or UFO, and they removed the debris from the crash site. They moved the ship and the alien beings in the place they took and put a hot weather balloon. They took a picture, put it in the newspaper, and basically to deceive everybody from thinking that it was a UFO, which they've been doing the whole time. The government has been deceiving the world, just as far as USA. the U.S. government has been deceiving the people of the United States for so long, and other countries have played along as well, because for some reason they think that we will basically have mass fear or hysteria or stuff like that if you find out that there are stuff out. There are humanoid people or people that are from not the solar system or not from the solar system, and they're afraid that will cause mass hysteria, which is silly, because we're at a point in time where I think that we can sit there and be like, okay, well, at least we know the truth, and now we can just get used to it, like just kind of like when you get used to doing a job or working out, your body gets used to it, your brain gets used to it, whatever, like same thing with different types of people. We get used to being around different types of people, but for them to hide this or keep it from us, or take the technology and keep it from us, it just shows that the government doesn't really care. They're going to do what they want to do, and no matter what we feel or how we feel or what we think, they don't care, because at the end of the day, they're going to do whatever they want.
Challenged the official U.S. Air Force Roswell report, which had no discussion of the reported alien bodies. In a speech that he gave, he stated, "As far as I know, an alien spacecraft did not crash in Roswell, New Mexico. But if the United States Air Force did recover alien bodies, they didn't tell me about it either, and I want to know." This open challenge in Northern Ireland forced the U.S. Air Force to do a second Roswell crash report. The U.S. Air Force released this report to a room of laughing reporters as they described how 6-foot-tall wooden dummies dressed in Air Force uniforms in 1953 somehow explained what people had described as small 4-foot gray creatures in 1947, including one alien that was still alive. The report was the Air Force's lame attempt intended to answer Clinton's challenge about the alien bodies mentioned in Belfast. Without any official record of the event, Lawrence Rockefeller did sit down with Bill and Hillary Clinton, and most of those documents were provided by Stephen Greer, who provided them to Lawrence Rockefeller. They met at the Wyoming JY Ranch, which was controlled by the Rockefellers. Rockefeller briefed both Bill and Hillary Clinton on the best available evidence for UFOs and for the need to make that information available to the American people. The mention of Hillary's name in the 1995 briefing at the Rockefeller Ranch is important because the Rockefeller Initiative documents that I recovered show that Hillary played a key role in the Rockefeller White House Initiative on UFOs. There are two key documents. In November the 1st, 1995, there's a letter from Rockefeller's lawyer to the President's science advisor, and in that it points out that Hillary and her staff have been helping Lawrence Rockefeller edit a letter of UFO disclosure to the President. The letter was called "Lifting Secrecy of Information About Extraterrestrial Intelligence as Part of the Current Classification Review." And what was happening was Lawrence was sending this document to various people, and he would threaten to send the letter to the President if he didn't get cooperation, and various people helped him edit the letter. Hillary was one of the people who helped edit this letter on UFO disclosure. In a second 1996 letter from Rockefeller to the President's science advisor, in the letter he clearly spells out the information that is coming from Rockefeller to the science advisor to President Clinton, and from
Not to sidetrack you guys, but look at this guy here. Here's another one. I don't understand why these people come to these press conferences if they're, just gonna fall asleep. A lot of times I understand, like, you get caught up with a bunch of people and you get comfortable, and all of a sudden, you fall asleep. But if you're gonna come to something like this, and especially if you wanna, understand or hear from different individuals basically speaking on this stuff like that, don't you think that it'd be, for your best interest to come here and actually try to stay awake, so that way you can gather information and know what's going on? But maybe this guy is just here, maybe he's a regular civilian and he's just here to, listen, and, maybe he didn't get enough sleep last night. Grandpa needed a daggone, get in bed early, but he stayed up till 10 o'clock, you know. But I think it's kind of funny. We saw the other guy that's over here. He looks like he's on drugs. He's about to fall asleep. There's another guy that's is asleep, and he's asleep. So I don't know. Me, if I was them, you know, I would have people um, that want to come and actually are engaging into this conversation. You know, I'd be awake because I'd want to know exactly what was taking place and take down notes. And you know, I think probably most of these guys are probably reporters. That'd make more sense if you think about it, because these a lot of times they have news outlets that come and they take notes and stuff like that, and they do like these letters and stuff like that, or articles, and post them online.
President Clinton's science advisor to Rockefeller, all that material is going through Hillary Clinton's First Lady's office. In 2006, the initiative faded out after the briefing at the ranch, and Rockefeller moved on to fund other UFO research activities.
Thank you.
2006, 1996, pardon me.
Mr. Hunenis.
If you just I just need to apologize. I have a meeting at the Justice Department, like at 3 o'clock, and I'll be gone until 5, and I'll be back. I apologize, but I have to go, okay? You've all been there, I think.
We
with these
get
things.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Well, I think I'm gonna cut it here. This will be part 1. We'll pick up part 2 probably tomorrow. But what do you guys think? Do you guys believe these guys, what they're saying? Do you have any information maybe pertaining to stuff like this, maybe that you can let me know about? You know, because I'm just recently kind of digging in and trying to understand this UFO, UAP phenomenon, why the government is hiding information from us. What is it really that they're trying to do? Are they just trying to prevent us from knowing the truth, or do they believe they will cause mass hysteria? Do you think that we have alien technology that we backward engineered and we're using it, but we're just not telling people because is the government greedy, or do they not want to let their counterparts around the world know that we have this type of technology? Um, as far as me, what I think, you know, I think that anything is possible, and I believe that we're not being told the whole truth. We're probably being told maybe 3% of the truth, so there's 97% that we're being left out of. And the president of the United States, I believe, is just a political figure, and I don't even think he knows what's going on. It doesn't matter who is the president. I believe that they don't get briefed constantly, or like, you know, for instance, they have these black projects that even the president don't know about. I think some of these black projects are pertaining to UAP, UFOs, and aliens, so or extraterrestrials, whatever you may want to call it. But I think it's sad, and I think that at the end of the day, human beings, the human race, we should know exactly what's taking place in our world, because at the end of the day, if we went to another world, I'm pretty sure if there was life on that world, and we came there, that humanoids or whoever was on that planet would tell their, you know, countries, and they'll tell their world or whatever about us, like, hey, look, here's these humans, they came from blah 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 blah, you know, they're here, blah 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 blah. But I think it's just out of greed and spite, and I think that the government is hiding this stuff because a lot of times they just don't want us to know that they have this technology for instances like oil and gas and all these different things. Like for instance, like I said earlier in the video, we're paying for electricity, we're paying for water, we're paying for gas. If they knew that there was free energy out there, we wouldn't have to pay for it. And then the government is corrupt, and they want us as human beings to keep continuing to pay. And they know that people out here are struggling to pay bills or have, you know, debts that they can't pay. But at the end of the day, the society is based off of money and money. If you don't have money, then you can't basically get anywhere. So, but anyways, my name is M. I appreciate you guys coming and watching this video. If you would leave a like or a comment down below, let me know, or let others know what you think and what is your opinions on what these guys said. Do you believe them? Do you think that there is life from outer this, solar system, or from different solar systems? Do you think that the government is lying? Do you believe that there are these black projects that we don't know about? And yeah, I appreciate your time, and I thank you guys for watching. Later.